with no previous setup or any real thought. And once again, I think it's a strong card, very strong card actually, but I really don't like the design of it. So, you know, if you love Face Hunter though, this is definitely your dream. Twilight Whelp. So this is a 1 mana 2/1 dragon, and it's a priest card. And if you're holding a dragon, gain +2 health. So this is for the priest dragon deck, like I was talking about before. And what it's looking like to me is a zombie chow without a downside, but it's only a zombie chow sometimes. So, you know, I'd say it's okay at best. If you're a priest deck and you're somehow looking to not trade in the early game and deal damage to face. Oh, sorry about that, guys. The overlay in the background messed up. If you are a priest deck and you're looking not to trade on the board but deal more damage to the face and not have the downside of healing them for 5, then this is the card for you, I guess. But in most cases, I think this card is not very good, especially since Zombie Chow in Priest has synergies with other things like Auchenai Soul Priest, where you can make the Zombie Chow deal 5 damage to their face. In that case, it's always better than the Twilight Whelp if you can pull off that combo, because it's going to deal more damage than this could except for if this got to hit for 3 turns. So, you know, I don't think it's great. In Dragon Priest, it might be played. It's not a bad 1-drop, but it's just not a great card. Oh, we have another big flavor card here from Priest. It's their rare card. It's a 2-mana card, and it's called Resurrect. And it summons a random friendly minion that died this game. So obviously a lot of RNG. And because it's a friendly minion, it needs to be a minion that obviously died on your side of the board. So the obvious synergies with this card are to play only minions that you want to resurrect. So people's thinking on this card is that if you're resurrecting something that costs 4 mana or greater, you're essentially making big gains because you've summoned that card again for only 2 mana. So it's a tempo advantage. And you can definitely craft a deck that makes this card quite good. That's mostly all I have to say about it. It can potentially be blowout great. But also, if you misplay, for example, and you Shadow Madness something crappy to trade into something that they have, that card counts as a friendly minion that died on your side of the board, so now Resurrect can hit that card. So you need to be very careful with what you steal, but if you can somehow make it through the early game as a priest without having early game crappy minions that you don't want this card to resurrect, and then get into the late game where you're playing all very valuable cards that you want to resurrect, then this card is great because it's 2 mana and it'll bring back something equally as good. So it's extremely good, situationally playable, and you definitely need to craft a deck around this card. Ooh, a very flavorful rogue card here. It's 2 mana and it's called Gang Up, and what it does is it chooses a minion that can be one of your minions, one of your opponent's minions, anything on the board, and you shuffle 3 copies of that into your deck. So this is a very negative tempo advantage, obviously, but because it's let me explain that more. You're spending 2 mana essentially to do nothing at the moment. You're just putting those cards into your deck for the future. But if you're playing against a control deck, or if you're playing in a control matchup where maybe Rogue doesn't have the greatest matchup, such as Warrior, for example, then this card actually becomes quite good, because you can put a very valuable card from their deck and put 3 copies of it into your deck, and you will draw into those copies because the game is playing out so slowly that you have chance to draw into those, and then you have 3 extra valuable cards in your deck. And also it adds 3 cards to your deck, which means that if by any chance you go into a bit of a fatigue war, your deck is 3 cards deeper than theirs, so you will fatigue 3 draws slower. So those are the upsides. It's another card that's a little bit hard to play, and you need to have a deck idea in mind that can essentially work in a negative tempo advantage like this, where you're spending 2 mana to not affect the board at all, only for future gains. But it's interesting, and it's another card that does something fun that people are going to just want to play for the fun of it, and those are the best cards in my opinion. Okay, so we have 3 mana Demon Wrath. This is a Warlock card, and it deals 2 damage to all non-demons. So just like the Warlock Imp, the Demon Imp boss that we saw before, this is going to be included in the Demon's deck, and it has some cool combos. It can kill off things like your own Nerubian Egg, but leave all your other minions unscathed, and destroy their board, like a Consecration would, for only 3 mana, whereas Consecration is 4 mana. So this card is actually quite strong. I think it's above average power level, and definitely in the Demon deck it's extremely good. Most of the time though, if you're not playing a Demon's deck, Hellfire is a better card overall. And finally, we have Revenge. This is a warrior card, and it's a bit weird. It's a 2 mana, essentially whirlwind. However, if you have 12 or less health, deal 3 damage to all minions instead of 1. So what I see this as is a potentially, in most cases, a regular whirlwind that you include in your deck. But if you're really bleeding, and if you're getting rushed down really hard by Zoo or some other sort of aggro deck, and you need to deal more than 1 damage to their board, this gives you options for that, which I think Warrior really needed and is great, because pretty much Warrior's only AoE clear, other than Whirlwind, which only dealt 1 damage, and Deathspite Whirlwind, which is also just another Whirlwind, which only deals 1 damage. This is Warrior's only higher damage board sweeper, which I really feel is a weakness. If Warrior gets behind on board to lots of mid-sized minions, they just lose the game, because they have no answers to that, and I think this card fills that slot. And most of the time, this card is just a whirlwind, like I said, but it has a potential upside. So at least in my opinion, I see it as a strictly better card, and I would pay 1 more mana cost for the chance that in a game I'll need that 3 damage instead of 1, and also because it's still playable on the same turn as Grommash as an enabler. It really doesn't change much, other than that it has a potential upside. yes, you may be able to make ever so slightly tempo plays like you would with Whirlwind if you use it as Whirlwind to deal 1 damage, but most of the time I think this card is better than Whirlwind, and I think it'll see play in constructed constructed warrior decks, warrior control decks. So that concludes the Blackrock Mountain card review. And you know, if you're like me, we're all excited. I believe it's coming out something like 1 a.m. PST today. I'm not 100% about that, but you know, it's very exciting, and we'll see how these cards progress. And thanks for watching.